The Making of Age of Mythology, A Journey of Changes and Cut Content. The beloved RTS game Age of Mythology had quite the long development journey. Ensemble Studios began working on it around the same time as Age of Kings. During this process, many ideas were either cut or changed. In fact, the early version of the game looked very different from what we got when it finally released. Back in 2000, 2 years before launch, the Greeks had units like satyrs, a mythological spin on satyrs, and Poseidon was even a playable unit. Crazy, right? We've got some old screenshots from 2001 showing what the game looked like during development. Unfortunately, there's not much info on the 2000 build, but most of the insights we have are from those 2001 snapshots. Now, let's dive into some of the cool but cut myth units from the alpha phase. Deleted myth units. Some of these early myth units made a comeback as hidden units in the Tale of the Dragon DLC, like the Griffin, Trocarian, Apep, and Golem. But there were plenty of others that looked way different. For example, the Frost Giant used to be a living ice creature, much simpler in design compared to the humanoid version we got. The Fire Giant was a lanky, bearded guy. Think of him as a fiery Viking uncle. The Scorpion Man had hands and could shoot arrows, while the Rock wasn't just a transport unit, but also had attack animations. Yep, a big old boulder ready to throw hands. Other cut designs included a German Brood, which looked like a sea monster and evolved into what we know as the German Alvar. And the turtle? It was more of an aquatic beast back then. The Leviathan, Griffins, Mummies, and Krakens were also in early versions, each assigned to the major gods without minor gods being a thing yet. Alpha concepts. In the early days, myth units were assigned directly to the main gods. The Norse would train frost giants, leviathans, and krakens, while the Greeks got sea turtles, golems, and Medusa. Fun fact, the leviathan was initially a Norse unit, sea turtles, Greek, and the serpent, Egyptian. Plus, hydras were once naval units before the team had even thought up the Scylla. The Kraken, in its early form, was supposed to hide underwater and only surface to attack ships. Its infamous instant death attack wasn't around at that point either. There was even an icon file for a siren unit, though it's unclear how she was supposed to function. In mythology, sirens are winged creatures with human heads and enchanting voices. Somehow, they were a mix between Greek and Egyptian naming conventions in the files. Unused units and animations. Beyond these, there were a ton of lesser-known cut units, like the Unicorn, Sand Giant, Greek Giant, and even Saturn. There are hints that the Vulture might have been an Egyptian special unit at some point, and Harpies seem destined to behave like underworld shades, sneaking through the shadows. Many of these early units could walk and attack at the same time. Some even had the ability to run. Here's a fun tidbit. Colossus units had sleep animations, possibly for use in custom scenarios. And the Sphinx? It could teleport into battles. Valkyries were jumping into fights too, while Leviathan had a special animation for loading units. Some units, like the Fire Giant, could even attack with their hands. Titans and forgotten concepts. Initially, Titans were going to be part of the base game. They were tied to a map called the Forgotten City, where the player who controlled 4 settlements in the center would command a massive mountain giant titan. This behemoth could destroy just about anything, and the text files ominously warned, "Be very afraid." There were also 2 units with sleep animations, the Guardian and the Colossus. The Colossus, in one of its sleeping poses, didn't even have a sword, resembling the Guardian unit in the campaign. Lastly, there was an Ice Titan that got cut from the Titans expansion. This frosty giant had a freezing attack that would have made your enemies shiver. God Powers alpha heroes were even more special. They could cast God Powers. Each God Power cost favor, and things like the Lightning Storm had a price 20 favor points. Some early God Powers included Divine Defenders, Wilds, Instant Forest, Secret Gold, Frost, Healing Spring, Lightning, and Meteor. But many were added later, and a few didn't make it into the final game. For instance, Enrage, a Greek god power that boosted unit attack rates and speed. Though scrapped, some files related to it still exist in the game. Rebellion. This power made all villagers stop working and rise up against their hard labor, pausing resource gathering and unit production. Think of it as the ultimate workers' storm. Originally a Thor god power, it blanketed buildings in snow, halting production and reducing unit sight. Over time, it became Fimbulwinter. Bramble, a Hades god power that created a defensive thicket around a town center. There's a theory that it eventually morphed into the carnivore god power from the Titans expansion. And let's not forget powers like Red Tide, Shepherd, Rainbow Bridge, and Hey Volcano, which all had interesting mechanics but never saw the light of day. So, Age of Mythology was once filled with even more mythical madness than we saw in the final game. From scrapped gods to untamed titans, the development process was truly a journey of mythic proportions.